So, Alan Wake, ladies and gentlemen. This is sort of a bucket list game for me. I didn't have the opportunity to play it when it first came out, and it passed me by for years. Until recently, I was looking for things to play on my Series X, which coincidentally ended up to be around the same time that the remake released. So I took it as a sign, as an opportunity to finally pick it up and try it out. And I learned two very important things about it after I had played through it. The first is that Alan Wake isn't so much a game as it is sort of a all-encompassing experience. And what I mean by that is to say that you don't play Alan Wake so much as you just kind of sit back, buckle yourself in, and take in everything that this game is, and kind of absorb everything that it throws at you into this kind of overall collective experience. The second thing is that I had no idea how dedicated and avid this game's fan base seems to be. There seems to be a lot of love and nostalgia surrounding this game. There are people out there that would argue that Alan Wake is one of the best horror stories ever written within the world of gaming. And it's those people that are probably going to be very upset with the things that I have to say. Because, to me, in my opinion, Alan Wake isn't really a horror game at all. I think at its best, it comes across much more as a thriller. And even that, at certain points, feels like a stretch. It's definitely sitting in the camp of it's so bad it's good. I will give it that. But I think we need to be honest with ourselves and just admit that it's a game that we can't take seriously. It's just not. And that's coming from somebody who honestly desperately tried. I got this game not knowing what it was, put it in, fully expecting that it was going to be this serious, dramatic crime, mystery, suspense sort of thing where Alice goes missing, Alan has no recollection of what's happening, but he keeps finding this fictionalized story of the day's events that he has written. And the deeper he goes into the mystery and the closer he gets to solving it, he has this revelation that he himself is the abductor, the murderer, whatever the case, the villain of his own story. And that's very much what I wanted the game to be and what I think it should have been. Now, I think there were sprinklings of that in the opening parts of this game, the initial few hours. But then we all of a sudden get this very bizarre, very sharp turn into supernatural ridiculousness. And it just kind of goes off the rails, very similar to something Stephen King would do, which shouldn't really have been a surprise or a shock to me. I mean, he's name dropped in the beginning of the game, and it's very obvious that the people that wrote this story are huge fans of his. But everything about this game feels very cringy, very campy, and just all around bad in the best possible ways. I think my mom hit the nail right on the head when she described it as kind of a B-roll horror movie from Amazon, or maybe something that somebody would submit as like a college level submission to a film festival or something like that. She even went as far as to criticize it in the way of music. The music that the game uses at the end of each chapter, telling me that obviously the music rights for this game are the majority of where its budget was spent. She was very, very harsh on this game for some reason. I will say, however, that there is a point, or was a point, where there was a shift for us in our experience. Around the point in the game where it really kind of delves into an explanation of what the dark place is, what's really going on, and how you are to defeat it, and the things that you got to do to overcome it. Around that point in the game, we weirdly got invested to the point where it was like, we have to see this thing all the way through to the end to know how it wraps up. And once we got there, we had to, capital letters had to, play through both DLCs to see how those ended. So, yeah, I once we came to the realization that this isn't a serious game, and to just relax and kind of let it be what it was going to be and just kind of enjoy everything that it was, let's not be afraid to poke fun at it, let's not be afraid to have some fun with it, and just kind of buckle ourselves in for the ride on the roller coaster that Alan Wake is. We genuinely enjoyed it, I think. But something that I will critique, since the game, obviously, since it's forcing me to kind of accept the whole supernatural entity idea with the darkness, I will say that I was quite disappointed with what the darkness does, in that it only seems to spit out these sort of weird shadow people and poltergeist inanimate objects. Now, this is a game that tried to sell me on the fact that this thing is a very powerful, malevolent force, right? It's this terrible, unstoppable entity. And I just kind of viewed the whole thing as a missed opportunity to express some creativity. I really wanted to see the most grotesque abomination, nightmare creature sort of things straight out of the darkest reaches of somebody's imagination, and it just never happened. And I found that to be kind of frustrating and disappointing, and quite frankly boring in a lot of instances. Some positive notes to throw in there. One, I think that the character of Barry is one of the best psychics in all of gaming. I think he is a fashion icon, and I think he is definitely my spirit animal, and a type of person that I hope to be, a type of man that I hope to be when I eventually do grow up. Secondly, I think that Odin and Thor rock harder than they have any right to. I actually have Old Gods of Asgard on my Spotify list, and I listen to them quite regularly and just have the best time rocking out to them, more than I am comfortable admitting. So, with all that out of the way, you know, and because I've proven myself to be one of you in a roundabout way, I've proven myself hopefully to be a friend. Let's talk about American Nightmare. And I don't know how to feel about it. I'm not sure how to file it away mentally. Because everywhere that you search on the internet suggests that it's supposed to be this standalone spin-off and not connected to the canon story at all. And yet, it sort of is. There's sort of these nuggets of connective tissues that suggest otherwise. For example, because it acknowledges because Alan is missing, Alice becomes sort of the executor of his estate, right? She handles book distribution, his book business, and kind of everything financially. It also tells you that Barry has moved on to managing Odin and Tor as they release a new album and kind of begin touring or whatever. So I'm just very unclear on what this game is or what it's supposed to be narratively. A lot of the suggestions that I saw online said that it was supposed to kind of supposed to express the idea of what does Alan do while in the dark place. What does his escape attempt sort of look like? Which, at the time, I said, that kind of would make sense because it was all we had. We didn't know if there was going to be an Alan Wake 2. We didn't know if there was going to be more chapters to this story. It was all we had, and at the end of the day, it was more Alan Wake, so I guess whatever. But then I kind of started looking at it a little bit more critically, and I pulled out of the back of my mind, that there is one of the DLCs that ends on a cliffhanger that suggests that he realizes what he has to do to escape the dark place. He is aware that he needs to and how to write himself back into the real world. So the idea that he's just kind of throwing himself at the wall hoping that something happens and he gets out doesn't really make sense narratively, because at the point in time this game comes out, we're supposed to believe that he is working on writing himself out of the dark place. So the only way that this game would work is if it chronologically came before those DLCs and those discoveries, which, to my knowledge, I don't really think there's anything that states whether it does or doesn't, so I guess whatever. But the theory that I came up with, and the way that it kind of works within my brain canon, if you will, is that this whole thing is just kind of an episode where Mr. Scratch is just messing with Alan as much as he possibly can and torturing him, right? He's trapped within the dark place. He's trapped within this time loop, having to experience it over and over because Mr. Scratch can teleport between worlds. right? He can go off into the true reality and do anything that he wants. The most, he can kill people, he can get eerily close to Alice, he can do whatever he wants, and the real Alan has no choice but to just kind of sit there and watch. And I don't think at the end of the game, when he's able to break the time loop and do away with Mr. Scratch, that is at all a permanent thing, or like a real lasting consequence. I look at it as, rather than him actually doing away with Mr. Scratch, that was more or less just a little bit of offense. He's been bullied, he's been tortured, he's been effed with the entire game, and he finally gets a chance to just punch Mr. Scratch metaphorically in the teeth. That's kind of what I took it as. And the movie of Alan and Alice that plays at the end of the game, I think was much more Alan realizing, like, that's what I'm fighting for. That's what I'm fighting to get back to. That's what I need to get out of here to protect. And I think very much that is what I'm expecting the plot of the second game to be, is him writing himself out of the dark place, and it's a race to find Alice, to get to her before Mr. Scratch does, and they have their final showdown where he's like, that is not me, that is a bad man, this is the real me, and kind of do everything that he can to protect his real himself, his persona, his reputation, all of that, and finally do away with Mr. Scratch and reinsert himself into his own life. I think that is very much what the sequel that we are getting is going to be, or I should say finally getting. But I guess we won't really know what for sure American Nightmare is until we see how this true sequel, Alan Wake 2, handles it. Is it going to acknowledge it in any way? I don't know. Is there going to be references to it, little Easter eggs to it, some sort of acknowledgement that it happens? It's chronologically there as something that Alan experienced, or are we just gonna wipe the slate clean and look at American Nightmare as kind of this weird fever dream that gamers experienced that never actually happened or existed within Alan Wake's timeline? I don't know. I think that's something that will be interesting to see, but like I said, I won't have the answers until we get to Alan Wake 2 in, I believe, 2023, so not too far away, but I'm excited. I hope you guys are too, and I guess until then, we'll see you guys in the next video.